I don't use this term because it's so disgustingly right-wing at this moment, but I am technically biologically a male, but I am legally a female.
Why? Why are trans activists like this? And why does anybody want to let them influence kids? We're going to react to a video of a so-called trans educator, plus an insane fat positivity TikTok and a disturbing story from Seattle's city government. All that and so much more on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where I take on the craziest ideas from across the internet, across our politics, and across our media, all from an independent perspective. Up first, like I mentioned, this trans educator is actually kind of terrifying. The Free Press's Ben Kowaler, a friend of mine, recently went to a New York City City Council meeting where they were discussing a resolution calling for pretty extreme and ideological sex education standards to be enacted statewide, where he spoke with Mimi Shelton, a self-described trans educator and activist who wants this curriculum implemented across the Empire State. The interview is one of the craziest things I've seen in some time, and that's saying something.
See, I'm a trans scholar, I'm a queer scholar. The lack of comprehensive knowledge around gender and sexual identity in schools stagnates the maturation and intellectual development of youth.
This is Mimi Shelton, a board member at Transformative Schools. In early December, I saw her speak at New York City Hall in support of a new theory-driven K-12 sex ed curriculum that reflects new ideas about gender, including that sex is not observed at birth but assigned, and that there are multiple genders beyond male and female.
Okay, let's pause there for a second so you understand the sex education curriculum that this activist is pushing for to be implemented across the state. It's already in place in New York City, by the way. Teaches fifth graders that non-binary and gender-expansive identities are things. It teaches them these absurd theories as if they're simple facts, and that biological sex doesn't exist. There's just a sex assigned at birth. It's not observed. It's not some sort of innate characteristic. It's just something doctors guess. Call me crazy. Call me a bigot. I don't think we should be teaching children nonsensical woke ideas like this. I mean, Mimi really seems to think that kids shouldn't be taught basic facts about human biology.
Is there a medical definition, a biological definition of girl or boy?
I would never advise a teacher to include a biological medical definition of boy and girl. If you're going to do that, then you need to use the terms assigned male at birth or assigned female at birth. If we want to talk honest, quote unquote, I don't use this term because it's so disgustingly right-wing at this moment, but I am technically biologically a male, but I am legally a female.
Bruh. This person just said biological sex is disgusting and right-wing coded. Not a lot of things on the internet leave me truly speechless, but that's one of them. I mean, babe, facts can't be bigoted. That's not how words work. But this individual does seem to struggle with how words work and how definitions function as well.
How do you think teachers should handle the question of a kid asking what is a girl or what is a boy?
You can define what being a boy and girl is, but you don't limit people's definition of what it means to have a gender to a boy and a girl. Because there are some kids who are gender nonconforming and gender non-binary who do not see themselves. I'm talking about people who are on a gender variant spectrum, who identifies genderqueer, who identifies gender nonconforming, non-binary, who use they them pronouns, who might not use pronouns at all. Those kids deserve a comprehensive gender and sex education just as much as any kind of trans or cisgender student who identifies as boy or girl.
What on earth did this person just say? Kids who might not use any pronouns at all. That's literally impossible. It is impossible that somebody doesn't use pronouns. They are a part of speech. Me and I are pronouns. So it is simply impossible that a child does not use pronouns. Like, what is this gobbledygook nonsense? And it's just totally incoherent to say, oh yes, teachers can provide definitions of boy and girl, but those can't limit anyone's sense of self-identification. Then it's not a definition. If it doesn't limit the meaning of something to a certain parameter, it is by definition not a definition. How do people who don't understand basic English, basic speech, basic grammar end up shaping progressive states' education curriculum? to be taught in their schools. This is not okay. This is demented. And I'm sorry, but the message for children who think they're non-binary should be that, hang on, your biological sex is what it is, but you as a person are free to express yourself in any way you want. If you're a female, but you want short hair, you want to work on lifting weights and build biceps, if you want tattoos on anything that's masculine, you can still do that and you're still female, and that's fine, because those gender norms or whatever are kind of silly and aren't necessarily required. We shouldn't be telling them that because they like certain things or certain aesthetics, they're not a woman. And we shouldn't be affirming that actually regressive and sexist belief in our youth, let alone teaching it as some sort of objective fact, when in fact it's a pretty fringe theory that most people in this country still reject. But what happens is that a lot of times the education system and what's happening behind the scenes there is something that isn't front and center. There's not a ton of transparency. A lot of these decisions are being made behind closed doors. And so diehard activists who infiltrate the system and who work in the system can influence it and perpetuate ideas and beliefs that aren't held by most of the parents funding the school or even most of the voters electing the school board, but it happens quietly and doesn't get enough backlash or attention, so it doesn't change, and they're able to get away with this kind of bizarre ideological indoctrination. But I think it's absolutely unacceptable. Now, this last part of the interview is the most absurd of all.
Should we have a word for people who have a male reproductive system versus a female reproductive system?
I'm not going to answer that. What I fear doing that is making myself out to be this person who is like, who the right wing can call themselves like indoctrinators. Like, that's not what my job is here. My role is to advocate. It's not to tell people exactly the roadmap, because it's actually a collective community movement that's made by many different trans people, many different allies, and many different teachers.
Right.
This person glitched when asked a basic question like, so does there need to be a word that lets us talk about human biology and reproduction, or is that too problematic now? That reality is too transphobic or whatever to put into the English language? This person glitched, then refused to answer because they're afraid of being made out to be someone who indoctrinates kids by evil right-wing people. Well, look, I'm not some far-right extremist. I'm not a transphobic or hateful person, but I do think this person is trying to indoctrinate children because they're literally at a city council meeting advocating for a bizarre fringe ideology to be embodied and embedded into school sex ed curriculum. If that's not indoctrination, I don't know what is. That's not a caricature of you. It's an accurate perception of the work that you do and are doing. And I just love this interview from Ben because he's so nice, he's so friendly, and he just kind of gives people a rope and lets them hang themselves. I mean, he doesn't shout at them, interrupt them. He doesn't twist their words. He literally just asks them questions and they expose themselves, which, once again, another win for free speech. Now, I do want to clarify something because there's a temptation to see videos like this and dismiss it as just, oh, a crazy person somewhere saying something crazy. And you can do that. You can just find a crazy person, interview them, and perpetuate it like, oh, this is all leftists, or oh, this is all trans people. And I'm not saying that. But what I am saying, and what Ben did explain in his reporting, is that this is something with systemic influence. This belief system is being perpetuated into school sex ed curriculum in many states. So it's not just some fringe person, it's a disturbing and relevant phenomenon we need to grapple with. As Ben put it in a tweet, whenever I'd see content like this online, a part of me always thought, well, you can find nutty things everywhere. But these concepts have been institutionalized and are now taught in public school health classes, at least according to the websites of the education departments of New York City, Illinois, Wisconsin, California, Washington, and about a half dozen other states. He explained more about this in the article. What's at issue here is something called the National National Sex Education Standards. And woven throughout these standards are some fairly nouveau ideas that seem to be rooted more in queer activism than science, Ben explains, like the concept that gender refers not to the state of being or feeling male or female, but to a set of cultural identities, expressions, and roles. The latest edition, updated in 2020, offers a glimpse into that ideology. The National Sex Education Standards, we are told, were, quote, written with a trauma-informed lens, have been infused with principles of reproductive justice, racial justice, social justice, and equity, address social determinants of health, and how these can lead to inequitable health outcomes, and take an intersectional approach. And like I said, these are the standards that Mimi is asking to be implemented across New York, but they're already in place in many states statewide. As Ben reports, the National Sex Education Standards are published by the Future of Sex Education, a collaboration of nonprofits, including Planned Parenthood, and it already informs the sex ed programs of at least a half dozen states, including Colorado and Wisconsin. Progressive states like California and Washington use sex ed curricula that share the same ideology. So this story is more than just a crazy person saying something crazy somewhere. It's a disturbing look into the indoctrination. And yes, this is indoctrination. And that is not a right-wing caricature of what's going on here that is infiltrating our school systems, where nonsensical, confusing, and actually regressive in some ways ideas about gender and sex are being taught to children as fact, which is going to perpetuate false ideologies into the next generation of voters and confuse kids into thinking they might be something like non-binary, when in reality, they maybe just don't conform to traditional gender stereotypes, but it doesn't mean they're not male or they're not female. I find this so maddening for so many reasons. First and foremost, because it's just wrong and it's an abuse of power, but also because I actually do believe in the concept of sex education, teaching young people as they're going through puberty about safe sex, about the basics of how human reproduction works and how sex works. I do think these things should be discussed and taught in a neutral and open way, but this gives credence to the people who reject the idea entirely and don't think it should be broached in schools and just want to leave it up to parents, even though I don't necessarily think that that approach works either, because not every parent, not every kid has good parents who are going to teach them the right things. Some have very neglectful parents who won't teach them anything. Others have ones that will teach them incorrect things or really only expose them to one perspective on things. And I do think kids or really teenagers should have access to accurate and neutral information about these subjects. That is not what these blue states are doing, and they're giving all of sex education a really bad name when they do stuff like this. And this is also more of the type of extreme TQ plus activism from the Wi-Fi password people that most normal gay people out there in America, and even most trans people that I know and speak to in real life, would say, oh, we don't support that. That's weird. That's crazy. But yet it's being lumped in with us as if this is LGBT activism. This is supporting the alphabet people. Well, guess what? People are going to see this, think it's crazy, and stop supporting us because y'all keep conflating our rights and our acceptance with this crazy bullshit. And you need to stop. That's my take on this, but you let me know what you think in the comments below. I always love reading the comments and hearing what you guys have to say. Plus, do make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet, and do hit that like button to reward my suffering through that absolute brain rot. And now it's time for Brad versus TikTok, my daily segment where I take on the craziest ideas from the Clock app.
Pronoun of the day is slugs.
Today, this obese TikToker posts grotesque videos of her slowly eating her way to an early grave, profiting massively from glorifying a public health crisis. We're gonna take a look and brace yourself. Okay, brace yourself.
Everything I ate today as a fatty.
Oh, I didn't know people were like proudly identifying as fatty now. Is that going to be the next letter of the Wi-Fi password community? And I am sorry, because I know a few people in my audience have this nose ring, and there are exceptions to every rule, but most of the time when you see that bull-looking ass nose ring, you are about to hear the worst takes of your life. And this video, not an exception.
We're starting out the day with some breakfast. And we also had to get some protein in for breakfast.
So your idea of a breakfast is a massive donut or pastry dipped into milk, which whatever, if you like to eat your donuts that way, I guess. I kind of grosses me out, but you do you, boo. Just pure sugar, spike the blood sugar, eat pure carbs, and then for your protein, it's a massive hunk of fried chicken dipped in ranch. Baby, you gotta be trolling us. Whatever happened to eggs and toast or some oatmeal? Like, this is crazy. And of course, like I eat donuts. We ordered some from our favorite place in Chicago not too long ago, and we've got some in our freezer. Like, we'll have a little bit of one now and then. It's fine to have sweets and have nice things, but you can't eat like this every day without slowly poisoning yourself. And that's what this woman is doing. The rest of her day continues as it began.
We got Dutch Bros.
Good, some sugary drinks.
We got cauliflower pizza for lunch.
Pizza, but it's healthy because it has cauliflower. I mean, again, like not the worst thing to eat in isolation. It's the addition of all these things that's the problem. Oh, good. More sugary drinks.
Ice cream tea with peach and raspberry.
Does this lady have any idea how much calories and sugar she's drinking? That's 3 sweet drinks by what? Lunchtime? Afternoon? Personally, I think that's one of the worst health mistakes people make is drinking lots of pop or sugary drinks. Like, it's okay to have some sugar and have some sweets, but I personally would much rather have a bowl of ice cream at the end of the day with hot fudge than these drinks. But I'm sure it adds up to as much or more sugar in those drinks. This is a way people eat tons of calories and drink tons of sugar without noticing that they're really doing that is through these drinks. Like, water is not going to hurt you, or even black coffee, black tea, herbal tea. You can drink things that if you don't like to just drink plain water, there's plenty of options that aren't going to slowly poison you. Now we get to her dinner.
For dinner, we're eating a burger bowl.
That actually looks really good. So the burger bowl actually looks really good. And I will be totally honest with you. That's the kind of thing I do eat sometimes. And it's good. Also, it's not as bad for you if you're going to have a burger. If you have it in a lettuce wrap like that rather than the bun, save some carbs. Of course, there's the French fries there that are pretty bad for you. And it's okay to eat like that. If you're active, if you eat healthy stuff, like, 80% of the time, it's okay to have good meals like that. Like, to me, that's the kind of food I like and do indulge in sometimes. But when you eat like this every day, you will become morbidly obese and you will most likely develop severe health issues as a result, potentially mental health issues as well. And on average, years and years and years of your life will be taken off your expected lifespan. That is a form of self-harm, and you deserve our empathy and our compassion and our sympathy for that, for whatever you're going through that's made you develop an unhealthy relationship with food like this, but it is not something you should be broadcasting to millions of people on the internet, glorifying and profiting off of. I mean, this has 8 million views or more, and it's conveniently 1 minute and 1 second long, just long enough to be monetized in the TikTok Creator Fund. And I know that because I also monetize my content. There's nothing inherently wrong with doing that. But when you're doing that based on the glorification of self-harm, yeah, I do think that's a problem, actually. Oh, and you thought we were done with the sweet drinks for the day after 3, right? You thought.
Bastari, 0 sugar cranberry to end the night.
So I have mixed thoughts about the sugar-free drinks. If people enjoy them, I mean, it's up to you, I guess. I personally have a theory that when you drink all the sweetness, but then your body doesn't get the calories that it expects as a result, it hits you with cravings. I used to work at a Subway in high school making sandwiches. That was my first minimum wage job. And we could just have free fountain drinks as we drank, but I didn't want to have a ton of sugar. So I would just get the 0 sugar lemonade and I'd drink like 2 big ones in a shift. And then at the end, I'd have all these insane cravings and I'd be starving and I'd overeat. And I gained a little weight while I was working that job, partly as a result of that overeating. And looking back, I think it's because I did that. But that's just a theory. I will say just because something's sugar-free or 0 calories doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy. But I guess, that's kind of up to each individual to do their own research on and decide. But she ended the night with that, right? Whatever, how many thousands of calories, how many hundreds and hundreds of grams of sugar, like that was enough, right? No.
We're ending the night with some Dippin' Dots.
I thought we already ended the night and you had to go and have yet more terrible food for you. I didn't count, like, the only thing that resembled a vegetable was a lettuce wrap and cauliflower pizza in all that. And again, I love ice cream. I eat ice cream. Nobody's saying you can't eat ice cream sometimes, but it's like if you always eat like this, you are harming yourself. One, also harming your budget. How homegirl is eating out like this? Maybe it's because she's profiting off of an eating disorder and glorifying self-harm to make thousands and thousands of dollars a video off the TikTok Creator Fund. But how she's eating like this, that's got to be bad for the budget as well, for your heart and your bones and your system that has to be weighed down by being morbidly obese. Everything in moderation. And I'm not here telling you not to eat anything bad, but you shouldn't be eating like this. And this is an epidemic in America. People literally eat like this every day. And then we wonder why we have the rates of heart disease and diabetes and all these other very serious health conditions that we have. Now, actually looking at some of her other videos, she does go to the gym. I don't know how often she goes, but she posts herself going to the gym, and that's great. But it is very hard to outrun or out exercise a terrible diet. And she posts videos like this every day, what she eats as an unrepentant fatty, her words, basically. And it's really bad. They're all like this, mostly. They're all terrible foods for you. And she's promoting this, glorifying it as if it's cute or chic or trendy, when it's literally self-harm. Think about it like this. How would the internet respond? How would TikTok moderation respond if a person with an eating disorder that starts with A did the same thing? What I eat in a day as a skinny girl, it's a cup of ice for breakfast. It's a bowl of chicken broth for lunch and dinner. It's a bowl of ice for dessert with some sugar sprinkled on top. Like, imagine that content. Would the internet be like, yeah, slay queen? Would TikTok be like, creator fund, here you go, here's thousands of dollars? Probably not. In fact, I mean, there's one creator I can think of who's kind of like that, but by and large, that kind of content is censored, down promoted, and gets pushback from the internet. People like this, on the other hand, are celebrated and glorified. And that's really messed up. That's really wrong. And it's only going to make this perverse culture when it comes to food and health and diet and culture on the internet is only going to make America's obesity crisis much, much worse. And there's nothing compassionate or kind about that when you are leading people astray and leading them not just towards the fridge, but towards an early grave. That's just my take. You can let me know what you think in the comments below. I do love hearing from you guys. And please hit that like button. The amount of delusional stuff I've had to sit through already today is taking a toll on me, on my brains, on my brain cells. They're last few ones are slowly incinerating themselves. Up next, we got to talk about a really disturbing story out of Seattle, because the woke city government in Seattle accidentally destroyed this woke woman's safe space. Let's take a look at some news coverage from Fox 13 Seattle.
A new year means a new contentious policy in Seattle. Starting tomorrow, minimum wage for the Emerald City is jumping up.
Yeah, that jump may be good news for workers, but businesses are now evaluating what it means for them. But as Fox 13's AJ Janeville reports, at least one local business says it's just the latest hardship, so they're going to be closing down for good.
It's never an easy decision to shut down a staple in the community, but the owner of Bebop Waffle Shop tells me with the estimated cost of doing business due to this minimum wage increase, closing her doors was the only choice.
We need to fold up the tables and just like sweep the floor.
It's the end of an era in West Seattle.
Oh no. This was my dream, to own my own cafe, to run it how I want to, and to really like be in service to people.
More than a decade ago, Karina Lukenbach opened up her business. She served breakfast to the West Seattle community for years.
There's like a waffle bar of things.
Now, her dream comes to an end.
I've cried every day.
The tough decision to close is due to several reasons, including less foot traffic and rising costs of goods. But Karina tells me the final straw is the city's increasing minimum wage.
Just for me, the increase would cost me $32,000 more a year.
She says she's all for workers getting paid the most. Unfortunately for her, she just can't afford to keep up with the change.
Especially after the election, I think the hardest thing that has really been for me to close is taking a safe space away from people. The stories of like what it meant to people to come in and feel safe and to feel welcomed. I didn't know.
For businesses that provided tips to their employees, the minimum wage change is a 20% increase from what they were paying before. Seattle's minimum wage now is $4 more than the rest of the state.
So this story is kind of heartbreaking to me, mostly because her dog is so cute. And now I'm worrying this dog won't have waffles to be fed from the counter. Oh, but it's just a sad example of progressive policy going overboard and hurting the same people it's supposed to help. I mean, guys, as the New York Post reports here, the minimum wage was already very high before this increase. Previously, large employers in Seattle whose payroll numbered more than 500 workers were already required to pay a minimum wage of $18.69 per hour. Small employers with 500 or fewer workers had to pay $18.69 per hour if the company did not contribute at least $2.19 per hour towards medical benefits, or if the employee did not earn sufficient tips to meet a combined minimum compensation of $20.28. But if that minimum compensation threshold was met through tips, or if the employer contributed at least $2.19 per hour toward medical benefits, the minimum wage for small businesses was $17.25 per hour. So the minimum wage for this business, presumably, and others like it, was already over $17 an hour, and they raised it much higher even further. The new $20.76 per hour law, which is $4 higher than Washington State's minimum wage requirement, applies to small and large businesses, and it eliminates tip or benefit credits. But it's going to help workers, guys, like the workers at this waffle shop who now don't have a job at all. Great job. Chef's kiss. I mean, this is the kind of thing we see often happen when progressive politicians just hike minimum wages and think that's not going to have any consequences. It's not going to backfire. No, it does. Target slashed the hours for their employees when they got hit with hikes. So they had to ended up actually earning less money because they had a higher hourly rate but fewer hours. So great job. You helped workers. At McDonald's, they famously passed on most of the increased costs of minimum wage hikes onto menu prices, onto consumers who tend to be low-income and working-class people. You cannot just pass a law to make workers' lives perfect. That's not how it works. And you also, in the process, will devastate small businesses and business owners like this woman. Now, the irony here is that it's like a woke company. Clearly, she's got the rainbow safe space on the wall. She talks about it being a safe space for all, and yet her own government, in pursuit of its supposedly progressive ideology, destroyed her safe space. There's an irony to that. There's an extent to which you can assume this person probably supported far-left politicians in her local area that did this, but maybe not, but I do think you can probably assume that. And so there was something of a bit of F around and find out in the comments. People kind of taking glee in this, saying, haha, get what you voted for. I don't view it like that because of all the customers and employees and that cute dog who will be harmed. And just more broadly, I still want the best for people, even if I think their ideas are really misguided. But I show you this video just to remind you guys that there are two sides to every story, and progressive politicians in this country love to promise people free everything or simple fixes that will help workers. Even the newscaster embodied that and kind of accepted that false premise at its face value. That won't hurt anyone, and we can just help people with just this one simple law, this new rule, this new regulation. And yet they never think about all the second and third order unintended consequences, which often, like it does clearly in this case to me and most minimum wage increases, harm more people and outweigh the benefits that they cause. That's my take. What do you think, though? Let me know what you think in the comments, especially if you're from Seattle, if you've ever been to this business. All right, guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. Our episodes are doing really well. Please do make sure to subscribe if you aren't yet. Do hit that like button before you go, and do comment with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. I'm looking forward to the weekend, and I hope you are too. We'll talk again on Monday.